We are one step closer to concluding our legend stage of the Rio Major as day 3 has just come to its conclusion, and now we only have 6 teams left, all jockeying for position to see which of those 3 are going to make it through to the champion stage. I'm joined again by Dualism, and we're going to be jumping into our major recap. Dualism, can you give us your positive, please?
I'm not going to go for any of the teams that actually qualified today. I'm instead going for Ence, because so far they've not lost to anyone except teams that have qualified. They did really, really well against Vitality, and Sunpius was absolutely popping off.
Oh, Sunpace was unbelievable today. Yeah, I actually had him down as my good as well, so I'm glad that we're on the same page about that. Monster performance against Vitality. Basically silencing Zaiwu with the AWP, and he also dropped a 1.51 rating in the best of 3 and a massive 35 kills on Vertigo with a 1.84. Like, to put that in perspective, the nearest player on Ence was Valda with 1.08. Like, he absolutely smurfed that game, and considering that he was one of the question marks for me coming into this tournament, I wasn't entirely sure if he was going to be able to stand and deliver against some of the best players in the world. Oh, he's completely proven me wrong. He's definitely cemented himself as a very, very solid player.
And I think what might have also helped Ence quite a bit is the fact that they kind of flew under the radar. There wasn't a lot of hype about them coming into Legend stage. A lot of people didn't have them in pick'ems at all. And I think that that's maybe led to them being underestimated by some of the teams there, and has kind of led to them getting some quite big results.
It's definitely possible. I think one of the reasons why they maybe flew under the radar is the recent performances, and the fact that you obviously have a roster that's fairly new as a 5-man core and now a lineup. So yeah, maybe some teams took their eye off the prize and effectively didn't really give them their due respect. And now, you know, against Mouse, that's going to be a really close game. Like, it's actually kind of hard for me to predict which way that one's going to go. So I think Ence is certainly a good shout to be put in that positive column. How about your bad pick for today?
My bad pick kind of has to be their opponent. It has to be Vitality in that game. The fact that they were 2-1 up in Legends, and in that 2-1 game, they had Spinks stepping up, and Zaiwu was not super present, so to speak. But now they've just fallen apart, and it was at a time where within those team ratings they were all fairly even. There wasn't really anyone lagging behind too much in this game, but they just couldn't close it out. It just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I was going the same distance as well with that one with Vitality, because 1-3 in Legend stage is, I mean, whichever way you spin it, that's pretty rough. Yes, their win was against FaZe, but let's be honest, FaZe got clapped 0-3 and didn't look like they ever really showed up to this major. If I was to direct it towards one player in particular, which I don't often enjoy doing, but I think in this case it has to be mentioned, Magisk in this particular best of 3 had a really off performance. He had a 0.88 rating in a hugely, hugely important game. And, you know, one of the classic talking points that we kind of bring back with Vitality is it's normally the Zaiwu show. Well, it wasn't necessarily this major. The problem is, though, that if Zaiwu's not going lights out and dropping 30s and basically being the carry of the team, you are looking to players like Magisk, like Dupree, to maybe pick up some of that slack. And they simply put, just didn't, especially Magisk in this game. So for me, that's definitely a bit of a downer as well.
And I know some people were also kind of talking about the fact that Apex was visibly and very obviously tilted, which, you know, some players are going to tilt, but you can't really have the captain of your team and your leader being the one that's tilting and expressing that frustration for the rest of the team to see, especially if you're meant to be leading by example for Zaiwu and you have a relatively new signing in Spinks.
That's something that I noticed as well in their previous game against Mouse. It was like when they were winning, Apex was super animated. He was laughing. He was constantly looking at kind of Zaiwu to make him laugh and kind of break the tension a little bit. But on the other side, when they started conceding rounds, especially the close ones, and he looks like he's ready to just go off the server and go spend some time alone, the rest of the team are going to feed off that energy. They're going to notice that. So completely agreed. I think that is certainly one thing that is a bit of a question mark. Well, we'll say Apex in particular actually had an individually pretty solid performance today. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough for them. and they go out 1-3, which already, considering that we've lost Nip, maybe not as surprising, but FaZe and Vitality, that's just making this look like a major that's up for grabs for the teams of the likes of Cloud9, who have looked super, super good in this bracket. And finally, Dualism, what is your meh team for today?
My meh team is Liquid. They've had a hard run so far, and they were able to beat Na'Vi, but looked they looked promising initially against Heroic. They were able to take that second map, but they're struggling to really kind of push it to the next level currently in Legend stage.
Interesting. Yeah, it was a disappointing performance for Elysia in particular. I did have him down as a potential talking point because, for the longest time in NA, I think Twists now has certainly overtaken him and has done for a while. But for a long time, it seemed like Elysia was going to be one of the main sort of heavy hitters from the NA region, and it hasn't really worked out. Disappointing result. They're still in the tournament, of course, but that's definitely one that's on the radar for sure. I mean, how do you gauge Heroic's performance then? Because I thought Heroic looked pretty good overall.
Yeah, I have them down as just a kind of generic positive. I think they are probably at this point one of the favourites that have made it to the playoffs so far. I think obviously Na'Vi will be up there once they join them, but I have no complaints about the way that Heroic have played, and I think it was kind of they may well be the saviour of many people's pick'ems when it comes down to it, and all of the dust settles tomorrow.
See, that was interesting, the wording that you used, when Na'Vi join them, because obviously Na'Vi still need to play big. So does that suggest that you have nearly no confidence in Big potentially pulling that one off?
It's less about confidence and more the fact that I need Na'Vi to make it through, because otherwise my pick'ems are really in the bin.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in the same category as you. We'll bring up our pick'ems in a moment just to show what Dualism is talking about. My meh was Mouse, actually, and the reason for this is because I had so much hype and so much, I suppose, expectation of this team, knowing what they're capable of, especially through the Challenger stage. I thought Outsiders was a winnable game for them. It's more the nature in which they lost that game that's a bit confusing to me. They lost 16-10, 16-10, never really looked in either of those games, but the biggest problem for me was that their T-sides on both maps looked lackluster and also timid. Now, when you compare that to the zest and the punch that they showed against Liquid in the very first game of the Legends stage when they blew them out 16-2, Frozen and JDC just basically waltzing around the map and taking every duel and fighting everybody and winning every game. It was night and day compared to this performance. I almost felt like I was watching a different team. They were executing with like 10 seconds left with no information. They were walking into set plays. They were walking into crossfires that James had already set up 20, 30 seconds ahead of time, and it just felt like maybe the situation got to them. Maybe some of the nerves of realizing, holy shit, we're like one map away from, or one game away, I should say, from potentially locking ourselves in the champion stage. But it just felt like they were off today, and I was a bit confused and a bit disappointed with that performance.
Yeah, especially Torji was pretty much missing during the entire sort of series, and we've seen that if you do not have your AWPer popping off, as FaZe didn't with Brokey, he was kind of towards the bottom end of their sort of scoreboards in their games. You're going to struggle when you have Sun Pius, you have Jame, you have AWPers that are able to get rounds, make the difference, and do a lot more for their team.
Yeah, so exactly, and that's one of the problems that I foresee against potentially Ence, because you just mentioned Sunpius, and they are going to be playing against Ence tomorrow. If Torzy has another off performance, if we don't see that aggressive T side that yielded so many results, I fear the worst for Mouse. They could very well go out against Ence, and that would be a real shame because of such a lightning solid start that they picked up. I mean, keep in mind, the two wins they've picked up here are against Liquid and Vitality, and sure, Vitality have had their issues, but those are two legit scalps. So I'll bring up our pick'ems just to see how grim the situation currently is for both of us. Mine, again, are on top, and Dualism's are on the bottom. So I've got 3 teams already through, with 3 teams playing tomorrow. They're all playing in different games as well, so it's potential I could get 6, which would be crazy considering how terrible the start was for us. And Dualism, you are resting on kind of a perfect run tomorrow with Na'Vi, Ence, and Liquid.
I have no fear. I fully trust that Simple is going to drop 70 kills in regulation. I believe that Snappy is going to have, just big brain reads, and Liquid Well, Liquid will do something and they'll win theirs as well.
That's some strong copium you've got there, but it's still possible, right? I think Na'Vi the favourites against Big. Yes, they haven't looked like they've been playing on their A game, but I still think they should have enough. Ence and Mouse for me is basically a coin flip at this stage, especially off the performances I saw today. And Liquid's... that's a tough one as well. I know that you are a big fan of Wonderful, so it's going to be a bittersweet experience, you know. If maybe it's a win-win for you, you know. If Spirit win, Wonderful goes through to the champion stage, you're super happy about that. Obviously, you lose your pick'ems, and if Liquid win, hey, maybe your pick'ems get saved.
I'll be completely honest. I want Wonderful to get no kills. I want my pick'ems more than anything. I do not care about a young player having a great major debut. No. Sod that. I want my pick'ems.
Well, you heard Dualism. We all want our pick'ems, and we're going to find out tomorrow if that dream does become a reality or if it turns into a nightmare, as quite a few pick'ems have already been dashed and thrown against the rocks. We're done for today, though. We'll see you again tomorrow to find out if our pick'ems have survived or if they've crashed and burned.